Yeah, Paul Romanak, who lives in Oakland, California, uh, is a good friend, a great friend. We first met in the fall of 1967, so 53 years of friendship. Not too bad. It may still work out at this point. He's a very smart guy. He's a skilled carpenter, among other things. And I want to say he's the best person you could possibly find to party with. So it's been a great relationship with Paul, something I've really valued. And he's going to tell us about raptors and raptor rescue in California now. Thanks a lot, Paul.
Okay. Are we good to go?
Yeah, good.
Okay. So hello, everyone, and greetings from California. I very much want to thank Professor Thurston, formerly known as my undergraduate roommate at Northwestern, for the opportunity to talk about my experience with raptors, who have become a newfound passion of mine since I retired some 5 years ago. I am by no means an expert on raptors, more of an avid enthusiast, and my talk today will trace my ever-evolving involvement and excitement volunteering with groups dedicated to the birds' well-being. And along the way, I hope to convey some interesting facts and features about these amazing birds. So I'd like to start off with sharing my experience with the Golden Gate Raptor Observatory. That was the first outfit I got started volunteering with just about directly upon my retirement. The GGRO, as we call it, is a nonprofit program of the Golden Gate Parks Conservancy in cooperation with the National Park Service, whose primary mission is to inspire the preservation of California raptor populations. For 35 years now, they have been monitoring the raptor migration in the Marin headlands directly north of San Francisco. And currently, some 300 volunteers and 4 paid staff members collect data on that migration that provides really critical insight into raptor health and population trends. There are some 19 different species that come through the headlands each fall from mid-August or so through mid to late December. And we have 2 primary units within the organization that are out there in the headlands tracking them. One is the Hawk Watch group, and one is the Hawk Banding crew. I became a member of the banding crew. The Hawk Watchers get up on one of the highest and southernmost hilltops directly across from the Golden Gate Bridge every day, and where for 5 to 6 hours every day of the week, weather and smoke permitting, they monitor the skies and do a sort of a full-time visual. They do a visual count of all the birds that they see come by. They break the sky into quadrants, the north, east, south, and west quadrant. And they have 4 teams that keep a steady full-time observation going. And whenever they see and identify a bird, they call it out. And there's a note taker in their midst, carefully chronicling all their observations. They also have a pretty neat system called passing, where a watcher who's counted a bird in his quadrant will alert a fellow hawk watcher in an adjacent quadrant that, hey, the bird is coming his way, and thereby avoid a duplicate count. But the primary skill set for the hawk watchers, as you might imagine, is the ability to identify birds in the air, especially from afar. And it's a skill that takes an incredible amount of time and patience and practice. Many species of raptors look very similar. There's great variations in plumages within each species, and adults and juveniles carry a lot of different characteristics. So I on occasion will go up on the hill just to try to improve my own identification skills, which still need some work. And I'm always amazingly impressed by the ability of these veteran watchers. They really know what they're doing. And it's a good skill for them to have, because they, on an average day throughout the season, they are observing and chronicling about 55 raptors per hour. So as I said before, I applied to and was accepted to the banding crew, where we trap and band the raptors and take assorted health data and metrics from the birds. There's a more involved training process involved with being a bander, i.e. a 2-year apprenticeship, learning how to trap the bird and how to process it within the blind once the bird is caught. We have 4 blinds scattered throughout the headlands, and on a typical day, we'll have 4 banders per blind. Usually 3 banders are trapping and 1 is processing the birds. We use a system of lures and mostly passive nets to capture the birds. And once we have a bird in hand and we identify the species, we take it into the blind and we place it inside an appropriately sized can. It's an open-ended can with a little Velcro strap at the bottom. Put the bird down, let it calm down a little bit while we prepare the paperwork and the tools we need to process the bird. Our primary objective is to get a metal band on that bird's leg, a band issued by the Bird Banding Lab, or the BBL, along with taking these assorted measurements to help augment our database. When we capture red-tailed hawks and peregrine falcons, we also put a color band on the opposing leg. And I'll have a picture in a minute showing an example of those 2 bands. After banding the bird, we take these measurements. We measure its tarsus depth, its hallux claw, that's the rear and largest of the 4 talons. We take its weight, its tail length, its culmen, we measure its culmen, and we take feathers from the birds for possible future DNA analysis. That might entail checking for the mercury load within a bird. Some years we will take swabs from the bird's talons and mouths to do future DNA analysis to determine what their diet has been consisting of. Other years, blood tests are taken to possibly explore how much rodenticide they're carrying, which is a major threat to raptors. Please, if you have any rodent problems, never resort to poison as the solution. That goes up the food chains, and the birds are very vulnerable. But at any rate, all aspects of this process with the bird are is totally engaging, and it requires a really rock steady focus on what you're doing, primarily to ensure the health and well-being of the bird. That's our top priority. Second, we want to take really accurate measurements. The measurements, if they're false, aren't really doing us any good. And thirdly, we're trying to avoid a chance encounter with the bird's talons. Yeah, that's important to pay attention to. But keeping a focus on while you're in the midst of this is not a problem at all, because the birds are simply captivating while they're in hand. They're just something to behold. But at any rate, the welfare of the bird is our top priority. So we try to process the bird as efficiently and as quickly as possible, so to not stress the bird out. If during the processing we see any sign of serious stress on the bird, we will suspend any further metrics and release the bird. But as a rule, the birds don't get overly stressed out. They can really sense if the person handling them is calm and in control, then they literally relax. And we watch newcomers to the program who are a little more tentative. And so I think it's the way, a typical situation, the birds get a little more excited when someone's handling them without very much insurance. But as a rule, the birds don't get overly stressed, as I say, and we get a complete processing. I'd like to now share some of the pictures of some birds I've had a chance to meet in the blind, and they can speak louder than I can as to the magic of these critters. Okay, so here we go. Let's see. Okay, so here, this first bird here, this is a sharp-shinned hawk. This is from the accipiter species, and they're one of the smallest birds we catch. They're fairly small. They're a little bit smaller than a kestrel, American kestrel. an adult male will weigh maybe 3 to 4 ounces. Very delicate legs, and they're you know the accipiters have long tails, short round wings, and they're really great flyers through the forest. They hunt after other birds, other passerines, and they can really cut a path through a wooded area. Very agile and good flyers. Let's see. Our next bird here is also an accipiter, a little bit very similar to the sharpshin. This is a juvenile, as was the last picture of the sharpshin. This is a first-year Cooper's hawk, and I just wanted to kind of share a fun fact about raptors, some raptors, because this picture has a fairly decent shot of the bird's foot and the configuration of the talons. You can sort of see there. You can also see the metal band. I'll have a better picture, but you can see the metal band on the bird's foot. And so a typical configuration for a raptor is to have 3 forward-facing talons and the rear largest hallux claw in the back. But ospreys and owls have evolved this kind of amazing adaptation. It's called facultative zygodactyly, which is a means for them. They can take one of their outer front talons and reverse its direction and align it with the rear back talon. So now they have 2 pairs of opposing talons. This greatly facilitates the osprey's fishing abilities. That bird eats from the sea, dives for fish, carries fish back to the nest, and also greatly increases the owl's ability during its night hunting. So I just found that to be, I was a recently learned fact that I found to be pretty amazing and interesting. But let's go on from here. So this bird is the adult version of the Cooper's hawk. You can sort of see some changes. The streaking on the chest has been changed over to kind of a brownish, often more crimson barring. The eyes go from yellow to red. And this is a characteristically fierce looking Cooper's hawk. They're fun. They're always impressive.
Can't see that one, Paul.
You can't see it.
Yeah. No picture.
Okay, hold on a minute. Let's try it. How's that?
Yeah,
Better?
good.
That's
Got
good.
it? Sorry about that.
Good.
Yeah, I forgot to press the done button. It's the first time sharing pictures on Zoom for me, so thanks for the feedback. Okay, so again, adult Cooper's hawk. The previous picture, first year of that species. This is the second year. Next up, we have. This is a juvenile red-tailed hawk this is our headlands in the background there. These are very well-populated birds in our area and really all throughout the country. We catch a lot of these birds and they're pretty mellow too. They look pretty fierce, but when we have them in hand in the blind, they're pretty mellow and go along with the process pretty agreeably. Now I'll show you a shot of an adult version of that same bird. Wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. I take that back. There's one more I want to show you. Here's one more shot of a juvenile red tail, because another thing we monitor in the red tail population is the morph. The number 2 on that little description placket there refers to the darkness of the plumage on the red tails. They can go from anywhere to being very light, bright, almost white in the chest area. Always usually have a belly band, but they can sometimes they can go completely dark. And so we rate them between a rating of 1 and 5. So that's a standard part of our processing with all red-tailed hawks. So now we'll take a peek at the adult. So this is the adult version with the classic red tail. Really stunning bird, very, very pretty bird. So next up is this is a very rare bird for us. We've caught 3 of these birds. This is a ferruginous hawk. This is the largest boodio in North America. We've caught 3 in 35 years. 2 were juveniles. This is the only adult we ever caught. It caused quite a stir within our group. Very handsome bird. I got a couple other quick shots of this bird. That's the dorsal side, and here's the ventral side. And lastly, a nice headshot. I just think a magnificent bird, really pretty. So next up, go ahead. Oh, did I skip it again, Robert? Did you not see that?
I can't see it.
Okay, but bear with me again. Let me go back, and you got it. Yeah, let's try that. How about that?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, there we go. Again, headshot of that same ferruginous hawk. Really caused quite a stir among our group when he joined the party. So next up, I gotta make sure to hit done. This is a male kestrel, the smallest of the 4 falcons that we're likely to encounter and often capture in the headlands. Very nicely decorated bird. And this guy's looking pretty comfortable, but I think very, very handsome bird. Just about the same size, a little bit bigger than that initial sharp-shinned hawk that we saw. This bird here is the next largest of the falcon family that we encounter a lot. This is a merlin, big bug-eyed merlin, and give a quick look at his plumage. Is done. That's what he looks like from the underside. Okay. Next up, we have a juvenile peregrine falcon. These always cause a lot of excitement when we capture them. We don't catch as many of those as red tails or the accipiters. And yeah, this is a first-year bird. I've got a shot of an adult here. This is an adult female who just, again, I think a stunning bird. She was very calm and collected, put up with our photo essay here very agreeably. The peregrines are truly amazing raptor. They're the fastest raptor in the sky. They're capable of diving for prey at over 200 miles. Some say up to 240 miles an hour. They have a double eyelid system and a special breathing mechanism to accommodate those speeds. They're very impressive birds. Quick shot of the backside of the peregrine. I can't really get enough of that bird. Let's go on here. So here is a captured juvenile, first-year red-shouldered hawk, and you know, not really any major distinctive colorings or plumages. And I want to contrast that with how pretty this bird, still a pretty bird, but how pretty it gets when it becomes an adult. That's a perch shot of that bird. That's the same bird as an adult, and this is the shot that really sort of shows its beauty, I feel. This is a shot from above, the bird in the air, and they're always a lot of fun to spot and be with. Okay, so. Oh, and lastly, I just want to show you, there's a detailed shot of the jewelry we put on the bird's legs. The metal band is the band from the bird banding lab. There's a 9-digit number printed on that, and the other one is the the color band, which yeah, is like, again, those go on our peregrines and our red-tailed hawks. Okay, so let's stop that. Okay, so quick aside on the purpose of the banding the birds. The idea is for the banded hawks, either dead or alive, when they're subsequently found by human beings, for them to get reported to the bird banding lab by the finder. The color band I mentioned above is easier to spot because it's larger and can often be discerned on a perched bird or flying bird if you have a good pair of binoculars or a good spotting scope. But the BBL, the lab was established in 1920, and it supported the collection and archiving of these banding records, and currently manages over 77 million of them. So if you have found or spotted a bird and you can, with a readable band, you're really encouraged to report that to the bird banding lab at www.reportband.gov. Once reported, that information goes into a database. They will send a letter of appreciation to you, the finder, and they will also forward the band recovery information to the original bander. In this way, GGRO often learns of the status and you know, the evolution of some of the birds we have banded many years prior. So back to that bird that was fully processed and ready to be released from the blind. We carefully take it outside the blind, and we really have to have a sort of a good grip on it, because the blind is a little darker and sort of confined space. And as soon as we open that door and the bird sees the open sky, it's ready to go, and it gets a little excited. We've sort of got to have that well contained. Otherwise, the bird starts flapping and it gets a little exciting. But we take it outside, we walk a few steps from the blind, we just lift our hand up towards the sky and release our grip. And it's kind of a magic moment, as is the entire time the bird is with us in the blind. Oftentimes, we will also, the Hawk Hill people are relatively near one of our blinds. The hawk blind is just slightly out of view from the hawk watchers. So oftentimes when we catch a bird in a hawk blind and we finish processing it, we will radio the watchers up on the hill and challenge them to identify the bird. We'll do a radio countdown and on the release. And as soon as we release it, it's very shortly thereafter within view of the hawk watchers up on the hill. And then we compare notes later on, and those guys nail it 99% of the time. They really know how to ID the birds. Another program that GGRO has on weekends is called Hawk Talk and Release. And there's a situation where, again, when we capture a bird and we've finished processing it at that hawk blind, which is near Hawk Hill, a hawk watcher will come down and retrieve that bird and bring it back up to the hill to do a show and tell with the assembled public. There's often spectators up there, sometimes school groups, and you know, they, like I say, they talk about the bird and then release it, and that's a very, very popular program. So that's how I participate in the fall raptor migration in my area. The watchers, our hawk watchers, average some 25,400 sightings per year. And we banders average about 1,450 banded birds per year. I feel truly fortunate to be part of the banding crew because it's just incredibly rewarding and exhilarating and just a privilege to be up close and personal with these wild and fierce and magnificent birds. And it's also a point of pride to be part of an organization that's really concerned about their well-being. So I wanted to share with you guys too that Ohio happens to sport a prime raptor migration route. In fact, the shoreline of Lake Erie can rival some of the best hawk watching sites in North America for the spring migration from March through May. The birds don't like to fly over large expanses of water. They there's no protection from predators and there's no protection from major changes in temperature. So they'll hit a body of water, they'll hit the lake, and they'll fly east or west to avoid that big body of water. With the right weather conditions, i.e. a south wind and good sun, you can see 1,000 hawks and turkey vultures in a day along the shoreline in Lake County. Apparently Lake Erie Bluffs, Arcola Creek Park, and Lakeshore reservations are all really good viewing spots for that. So if you guys happen to be traveling anywhere near there next spring, I would encourage you to be packing your binoculars. I want to share one last note on migration. The fall migration south which is what we get involved with GGRO, involves birds from many North American migration routes, i.e. the North Pacific Coast route, the Central Pacific Coast route, the Great Basin Ridges, the Great Lakes, the Central Appalachian, and the Northwest Atlantic routes funnel all of these, just a myriad of birds down the continent, down through Mexico. These birds are heading south to Central and South America for the winter. And each fall, 4 to 6 million birds fly through Veracruz, Mexico. Some almost 30 species of raptors, although 4 species dominate. Some 2 million broadwings, 1 million Swainson's hawks, 200,000 Mississippi kites, and 1.5 million turkey vultures all contribute to this river of raptors. So in a given hour down there on a good day, you might look up and see a group, or a kettle as it's called, of broadwings, and see 50,000 of them fly by in an hour. There's been days where the aggregate count of raptors flying by is over 700,000. It's sort of incomprehensible. And that doesn't include the other birds that are migrating. There's shorebirds and waterfowl and passerines. It's kind of a birder's mecca. And when and if the COVID ever leaves us, and I've still got any international travel left in me, I'm very intent on getting down there and experiencing that. So I wanted to now move on to some other organizations I've gotten involved with. Through the GGRO, I met a lot of experienced and knowledgeable birders who turned me onto other opportunities. And one such group I wound up joining was the Golden Eagle Monitoring Team, which does extensive field surveys on the golden eagle population in the East Bay, across from the San Francisco Bay. And the golden eagle population is just really well represented. We're looking primarily in the regional parks over here. And I had no idea. When I was thinking about joining the program, I decided to shadow a veteran watcher. And we went down to one of his territories, a regional park down south and east a little bit of Oakland. And we went up onto a hilltop with a commanding 360-degree view of the entire area. And in about 2.5 hours, we saw 13 golden eagles. I was kind of astounded. And my veteran companion calmly told me that 10 of those birds represented 5 resident pairs, all from territories he was familiar with. He was familiar with the territories they were from and the birds themselves. So that kind of set the hook for me to join up with those guys. So I joined the volunteers every December, usually is when we start. We go out at the beginning of mating season and go to the known eagle territories to confirm occupancy, nesting, and procreation success of potential resident pairs out there. And for a newcomer, the process can be a little challenging. Oftentimes our observation points are about 1/4 mile from the nest site, but sometimes considerably longer, 1.5 miles, 2 miles. And even with a good spotting scope, it can be challenging identifying and tracking the birds. But practice makes perfect, so we'll stay at it. But eagles will usually mate for life. And when we're trying to confirm occupation, there's a couple of things to look for. Paired soaring, undulation, gathering up nest material for the nest, decorating a nest, or copulating within at a location within an existing territory. undulation, by the way, is a term that refers to this incredible courtship aerial display that the eagles put on. Usually one or both members, but often both members will engage in it, where they just get involved in a series of steep ascents and steep dives. Sometimes it involves a rock or stick where they'll take that up on the ascent, drop it, and then dive down and catch it, and then repeat the process 2 or 3 times. And it sure seems like it's being done to impress their potential mate. And as you're witnessing it, it sure seems like a sure bet. It's really fun to behold. But so let's see, where are we here? Bear with me a second. So once we've confirmed occupation and courtship behavior, the next task is to determine where the nest is. Oftentimes there's more than one eagle nest within a territory. They'll change it up sometimes, so it's not immediately apparent where we're going to be looking for the birds. So the idea there is to, at the beginning of the season, when we've confirmed courtship and we think they're mating, is to track them when they're soaring and see if we can track them, keep them in the scope until they go back to their nest. If that fails, if they have been successful, the female is the primary bird to do the incubation on the eggs. So she'll sort of disappear from view, and the male will start being the primary prey deliverer for her. And so that's the next thing to keep an eye on, is what he's up to and where he's bringing prey. Sometimes we are lucky enough to see the nest. We then can count the chicks and follow their progress and see how many successfully fledge when they've reached the appropriate age. Oftentimes we don't know where that nest is, and so we'll try to do the math. If we have a pretty good sense of when that female might have started incubating, we can do the count. It's a 41 to 45 day incubation process for golden eagles, and another 65 to 72 days before the birds actually start to fly. So we'll mark our calendars and try to make sure we're out at our observation points when those juveniles might first take to the air. And the juveniles are very easy to identify, as their plumage is considerably different. In fact, it takes 5 years for a juvenile, a young eagle, to become a full-fledged adult. So this observation season with the eagles usually runs from about December to June. We go out for 4 hours at a time, depending on whether we learn what we need to learn early on in the observation, but oftentimes it's a full 4-hour observation. And that the information gathered, shared with the USGS, US Geological Survey, can often lead to the protection of the eagle's territory and can even help prevent development that might encroach upon a proven nesting area of the goldens. I was hoping now to quickly share through this group. I got invited to a golden eagle chick banding party, and I have not a great, but I want to share with a quick picture of a young 7-year-old chick that we decided to get a band put on its leg. Let's see if we can find that guy. So this bird and its parents, a single chick that year, was living up 85 feet up a Monterey pine in a park really near, just up the hill from where I live. And in order to get to the bird, they brought in a professional tree climber. He set the rope. The tree climber and Doug, who's the head of the East Bay Regional Park District, who's an avid birder, they self-belayed up the rope, grabbed the chick, put him in a bag, dropped him down, and the bird was banded down on the ground, and was also fitted with a GSM cellular transmitter. So his early meanderings, once he took to the air, could be closely monitored. Unfortunately for this bird, that ability to track him revealed that he wound up dying after the first year, very close to home. He came back to the nest area territory and didn't make it, which is the case with lots of young raptors. There's most juvenile raptors do not make it to adulthood, or maybe some 35%. survive. I mean, the numbers vary, but it's a rough road that first year for the birds. At any rate,
Paul, I think you should leave time for questions any time now.
okay. All right. That's fine. I was just going to say, I did also get involved with a peregrine falcon group that specifically checks out their nesting sites. But yeah, I'm ready to entertain questions. I'm not sure, like I say, I'm not a font of information on the birds, but I'll field what I can. Sure, if we want to switch to that, let's do it.
Paul,
I have a question.
Yeah.
The one thing that came to mind, you had the bird in the blind and you were processing it. Do you do anything for its health? Are you equipped to do anything for its health situation if you find that it has something going on that is curable?
It's a good question. And as a general rule, we don't interject. We're there to sort of collect the data on the status of the birds. Sometimes we'll collect, last year we caught a red tail that had a pretty severe case of it was sort of like I forget the term for it, but it was a grunge. It had this growth on its talons and its growth on its culmen, its beak. And it was severe enough. It looked like it was going to eventually kill the bird, but no, we don't interject on that. We're there to kind of observe, collect data and observe existing populations. But, and basically it's, we really get to, for example, the data that we've collected over the years has indicated a real reduction in the number of kestrels, the small falcons. So that prompts people. The manager of the banding program did her master's on the population trends of the kestrel. So there's a lot of scientists. We're a bunch of community scientists, volunteers like me, or we call ourselves community scientists, but there are a lot of really serious birders that are part of the program, and they'll take it a little bit deeper. But yeah, we don't interject.
Any other questions?
Yes, that was a fascinating program. I have been to a bird banding station and they use mist nets. Do you use nets to catch the birds? How do you do it?
Yeah, we do use mist nets. Absolutely. If you've seen it, it's very similar. Basically, it's kind of a regulated system. It varies from place to place. I can't go into serious detail on it, but I would say that think of it as a series of lures and lots of nets, a lot of vertical, lightly sprung nets to intercept the birds, and mists are one of them. That's definitely one of the tools we use.
Right. Well, is there any other method you use to catch them?
No, it's all about nets for sure.
It's all about nets. Okay.
Yep.
Very interesting.
Thank
I
you.
wonder if I can ask a question.
Sure.
How do you and your colleagues who are interested in the welfare of these birds reassure yourself that the banding doesn't interfere with the functional operation of the bird?
I think that's been pretty much proven over time. We put when we're banding, usually the majority of the birds we catch are juveniles. They're first years. We don't catch as many as adults by any means, but their legs are full size. We are very, very careful about properly sizing the band so as to not create any issues on that front, not to put on too tight a band. And we've gotten this feedback, this data that we get back from the BVL. We've got information back on birds that we've banded 20 years prior. It's pretty much been proven over time that the band itself is not problematic for the birds at all. And as I said, if we have the bird in hand, some birds really start stressing. They don't like being handled. They don't like being contained. And if we see evidence and they exhibit fairly readable signs, if that happens, we just say, we're done. We let the bird go. It's funny. The priorities have always been health of the bird, accuracy of measurements, then health of the volunteers. We've always been sort of third tier. And then after an accident or two out there and a couple of workman's comp claims, we try to reshuffle those priorities a little bit and but the birds' welfare is very carefully looked after.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question.
One more question.
Yeah, I noticed nobody had gloves on and those talons are sharp. Do you ever wear gloves?
Excellent question. Very early on in the program, gloves were part of the process. That first bird I showed you, the sharp shin, their legs are long and probably, I mean, they're not a lot bigger than a toothpick and they're very delicate. And gloves just kind of remove some of that sensitivity to handling and feeling the bird. So it's in deference to the bird's well-being that we do not wear gloves. And people occasionally do have a lapse in focus. And if you get, footings do happen, is another way of saying it. And you're absolutely right. The bigger the bird, the more challenging. I mean, if a red tail foots you, you can't get it out. They just lock on and they just lock in. You have to get somebody to come over and kind of retract the talons for you.
Kind of like getting a hook when you're fishing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Lee could relate.
Thank you so much for coming today and sharing this. And isn't this one positive thing about Zoom? Paul's in California, and he was talking about the smoke quality of the air. And I'm looking around, I'm thinking, it looks pretty good today here in Oxford. He's out on the West Coast. So very interesting. We're going to put a book in our local library in honor of your talk today. Thanks so much for sharing this and sharing your time, Bob. Thanks for arranging this. We appreciate it. One more question before we move on. Anybody else?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Paul if the Raptor project is any indicator of the general quality of the environment.